Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an assassin snail named Gatis. Gatis the assassin snail lived on the sea floor where she would hunt for other snails either by herself or with her friends. She was a funny little snail. Whenever all the other assassin snails would come together to prepare for their next hunt, she would always wander off. As the other assassin snails looked on in disappointment that she would leave the group again to look for bigger snails to hunt. Normally, she would hunt with her friends, but they would always go for the medium-sized snails. She wanted the huge snails. She thought she could take them on, and she wanted to prove to her friends that she was able to hunt the huge snails on her own. One evening, under the moonlight, Gatis the assassin snail announced her plan to all the other assassin snails. "Tonight, I am going to hunt the huge snail." The other assassin snails gasped, their shells clattering against each other. The huge snail was rumored to be so big it could feed a whole rout of assassin snails. The huge snail wasn't just a legend that every other snail talked about. One of the onlooking snails said to Gatis, "You know, there's a reason why all of us assassin snails would rather just hunt for the medium-sized snails. I mean, we could technically just get the huge snail together, but we wouldn't know what to do with it. There's just too much of the huge snail for us to eat. And we don't want to hunt this huge snail and go through all the trouble when we can't even find a good use for everything at the end. Come on, just stick with the medium-sized ones with us. They're better for all of us to hunt together. Plus, it's more fun hunting together in a group." But Gatis was unconvinced. With a determined look in her eyes, she set off toward the middle of the sea, just about over 100 feet from where they were, where the legendary huge snail was rumored to have been. It took a whole hour. And in that hour, Gatis had to test her patience and perseverance. The other assassin snails had a good reason to not hunt the huge snail, but Gatis wanted to show off that she was strong enough and brave enough to take down a huge snail by herself. After an hour of sluggishly crawling in one straight direction towards the huge snail and passing other sea creatures who were all interested in what she was going to do, she finally was able to reach the huge snail that was a little over 100 feet away from where she came from. And it was there, all by itself, on some soft, loose dirt. The huge snail was just sleeping and minding its own business. Then Gatis the assassin snail made her move. As she was getting closer to it, she said out loud to the huge snail, "Hey you, huge snail! We assassin snails usually hide and attack when you least expect it, but seeing that you're much bigger than me, I'm gonna hunt you face to face, one-on-one." The huge snail looked at Gatis the assassin snail and said, "Who dare wakes me up from my sleep?" And the huge snail turned around slowly as Gatis the assassin snail was moving toward the huge snail. And so, the battle began. not an action-packed, fast-moving battle. They were snails. So Gatis was still about a foot away from the huge snail. And as Gatis the assassin snail got closer and closer to the huge snail, she stretched out her proboscis. And as her tiny teeth aimed at the huge snail, while Gatis was getting closer and closer, with her teeth leading the way, the huge snail moved toward Gatis's left side, and so Gatis moved to her left side, and slowly, as her sharp teeth were about to touch the huge snail's antenna, the huge snail tricked her and slowly moved to Gatis's right side at the last moment. Gatis wasn't thinking about the loose dirt on the sea floor and that the huge snail moved over just in the last moment and just in time for the loose dirt to sink down a little, making Gatis get stuck in the loose dirt. And now she was in some very murky water. As the huge snail slowly went away, saying to Gatis the assassin snail, "Not today, little snail. Not today." As the dirt settled on the sea floor and Gatis the assassin snail got up from her slow fall, while the huge snail was way off at a distance now, Gatis realized she was too eager to catch such a huge snail by herself, and that maybe hunting for the medium-sized snails wasn't such a bad thing in the first place. Gatis returned to her group of assassin snails right in time for them to go off on another hunting adventure. The other assassin snails came around Gatis and clicked their shells against hers as a way of helping her feel better. Gatis the assassin snail said to the others, "Hey, I think I went too far and I wasn't able to take on the huge snail by myself." One of the other assassin snails asked Gatis, "You actually faced off against the huge snail by yourself?" Gatis said, "Yes, I did. And wow, was it huge." The other assassin snail said, "Wow, you are one brave snail." Gatis then said, "I guess, if you want to call it that, or me just being a little impatient and a little unwise, that snail was pretty big. I can see why you all would rather go for the medium-sized snails. At least we'll all be able to eat and not have anything left over to waste. That's a lot of work to get down a huge snail like that. Look, everyone, sorry I left all of you. I won't leave you all next time we go hunting. I'd rather hunt with you all anyways. It's more fun hunting together." And so all the assassin snails went off together for their next hunt, and Gatis was able to appreciate all the hunting adventures she would have with her assassin snail friends. And it didn't matter if the snails they caught weren't the huge snails she wanted. It was just the right amount they all needed. And most importantly, they were all able to have a good time together as friends. And the assassin snail lived happily ever after. The end. The assassin snail is also called Clea helena or bumblebee snail and is a species of freshwater snail. They can grow up to 1 1/4 inch in size, and they are native to Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. They have a conical-shaped shell and a tube-like appendage that sticks out of the shell mouth called a siphon, which they use to breathe and to sense surrounding objects. And their eyes are at the bottom of their two antennae. Assassin snails are light grayish and green in color on their flesh, and their shells are colored with black and brown or yellow stripes, which is why they are called bumblebee snails. Many people have assassin snails in their aquariums or fish tanks to help with controlling pest snail populations. Assassin snails are carnivorous, and they're also opportunistic feeders, which means they'll feed on just about anything. They don't eat plants or live fish or shrimp, and they will not eat their own kind. The assassin snail can hunt alone or as a group, and many of them can work together to take down a bigger snail. Assassin snails are called assassin snails because they wait in ambush for their prey. They can bury themselves under the sea floor and have their siphon poking out of the ground, waiting for their prey. Or they could just chase down their prey. Assassin snails don't have any poison. Instead, they eat their prey with their tiny teeth. Assassin snails eat their prey by sticking themselves on the backs of other snails, and a proboscis comes out under the siphon and stretches into the shell of their prey. A proboscis is another part of its body that grows out like an appendage that the assassin snail uses to eat their prey. On the tip of the proboscis are tiny teeth that help them eat their prey. Have you seen a real-life assassin snail before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!